Hi there, it's Polly here with Mr. Snoots. Yay! So look, I just wanted to briefly anecdote you about one of the best role-playing game campaigns I've ever been in. So, I share a house with role-playing gamers. And during COVID, boy, wasn't that useful. So we had a wonderful campaign, and it was run one-on-one. My housemate was the umpire, and I was the player, singular. And this campaign ran for about 4 or 5 years and was spectacularly good fun. All homebrew. We used a sort of a modified D20 system that we'd made ourselves. No levels or anything, but skills and so on were put into the game. So what we had was this setup where my friend has a very complex world that they've created, and it's an interesting sort of multiverse, really. Very complex. It has some elements of sort of, what would you call it, some kind of cyberpunky elements. There's magic everywhere. There's a couple of different magic systems. One's called weaving and one's out and out sorcery. They both have different sources, they both have different uses and things that they do. And she has city maps, and she has an entire political structure, and the political structure was where this thing shone. A 5-year role-playing game campaign. My character never had a combat once, and we had the time of our lives. So the character that I created was called Kira, and she was a penguin. There were many different kind of races and so on. There was an off-world world, a planet, which had avian races. So I was a penguin. So this thing starts with me fleeing. There are teleportation gates between some worlds. So I've managed to sneak my way through because it actually costs you a huge bundle to use these. My character's main strengths were dancing and being nice to people. She was just incredibly pleasant and charismatic and empathic and helpful, and she had a lot of talent for magic, but was unable to do it, which is one of the reasons she had fled to a place called the Central Plains, this central world, which was sort of where so much magic and so on came from. So she's ducked through, immediately has to evade security and so on. She bursts out onto the city streets of a city she doesn't know, but there's lots of different races and so on running around, and she's just brought herself one little bag because it's all she could hide with. But what I had in there was essentially a black miniskirt and kind of white shirt, which I could swap from the clothes that I'd burst through the gate wearing. And that kind of black and white on the penguin and everything, not only a fair look, but it looked kind of waitressy. So I managed to basically hide amongst some cafes and so on, as if I was staff as security went past and so on. So anyway, she's free and loose and wandering this amazing city. But it was very high-tech, way higher than where Kira had come from. There are some vehicles which seem to hover. There are some artificial life forms, robots running around, but there's this glitzy, huge place in the middle. And you are told you are in the city of Arcadia, and this whole place, this central plain, seems to have one region which is almost split up into high-tech city-states, and Arcadia is the beautiful one. Oh, so you've lucked out. You arrived in the beautiful one. It doesn't have much heavy industry or anything, but it does a lot of entertainment and arts, and it's seen as just a pleasant place to be. But there is this place called Dolphin Blue, which was this amazing entertainment complex called Dolphin Blue. There was even a big pond out the front which had a robotic dolphin swimming around in it. But they are in need of performers, dancers, singers, all this sort of stuff. So Kira races in there, and she managed to get a introduction, and so she could go in there and she could go through her motions and see if she could get hired. But there were some other very nervous people lining up waiting for their auditions, and they had some terrible problems. So Kira immediately just leapt in and helped them and sort of dusted them off and helped them in their moment of crisis. And some of these people got in, so they were very grateful to her. But she completely aced out her audition and was like, wow, this one's not only a species we haven't really seen before, which is a plus, but this gal can sing and this gal can dance and this girl's something special. Let's give her a decent performance. Let's see what we can do. There were other individual performers there who were, trying to turn up as a dancer or a singer or whatever. So she gathered those together and said, let's be a group. Let's be a performing group. So this is what we did. And so we set up this whole kind of Pussycat Dolls sort of sexy dance, singing burlesque performance show, and that got us all somewhere to stay, because you could stay at Dolphin Blue because we'd been given the good performing layer, which meant that we could get kind of decent hotel style quarters at this place. And so she's off, so she's got a performing gig, and these performances were amazing. Each week was played out as Kira explores the city, discovers people, explores Dolphin Blue, discovers people. There are crises going on. There are performers having all kinds of crises. There's weird security crises. There are some strange monsters in this place, and some of these things are quite insidious. They're out there in the streets. Some of them try to get into Dolphin Blue. The security team's there to stop them. A lot of these things feed off emotional energy, and an entertainment place has a lot of emotional energy to feed off. Some of these things are also almost harmless. Kira finds some, befriends some. She has to seek and find some way of learning magic. There is like a brotherhood who look after refugees from other areas that have come to Dolphin Blue. It's the place to try and live. So these guys are trying to find food and so on. They can teach her magic, but she's got to do things like for them. She needs to get some credit, so she goes out, she solves some problems, finds some kids that are missing from some refugee families and these sorts of things. Now she's got enough credit with these guys that, all right, they'll take her on as a student. And again, as we just roll the luck of the dice, no, this person Kira has a real talent for this stuff. As she rolled to see if she could learn magical theory and so on, it's like, no, she really gets it. Like, here we go. These are incredible RC rolls, like 20s, but it was really starting to tell the tale of this character and of her band and her friends. The guy that ran Dolphin Blue, as it turns out, he runs the entire city-state, and Kira begins to find out these people are basically gods. It took a while to figure it out, but this guy's under a huge kind of curse. Half of him's kind of changed shape to be almost demonic, as in split down the side. This guy's a terrible, terrible drunk. However, it's basically self-medicating because this process has a huge amount of pain, and when the pain takes over, the demonic side takes over. But Kira befriends him and starts trying to look for a way to actually solve and cure this, and eventually she does. And so she's now kind of in the political circles of this thing. She's solved a problem that's dogged this whole city. She's also starting to meet other people, and other people in the high political area, and the Penguin is starting to become incredibly well known and popular. There was a water park attached. She becomes the face of the water park because she's just hanging out there all the time anyway and was helping people out, and hey, she's this charismatic performer, so basically she does the TV adverts for the water park, becomes known as the water park penguin. So everyone, hey, it's a water park penguin. Yes, she's got free passes to the water park to hand out. But she starts podcasting, does radio shows and so on, and there's a whole underground arts movement because it turns out there's been a very repressive regime. It turns out these monsters, because they feed off emotional energy, there'd been a oppressive regime that had tried to crack down on sort of arts and entertainment. We can't have things that let the wrong thoughts and feelings out. We don't want any horror or anything getting out there because these things will feed off it and become more powerful. So we just want kind of government approved joyousness or whatever. Turns out Dolphin Blue and Arcadia are definitely almost flying the pirate flag here as they're doing stuff that's not on the approved list for other cities. And so off we went. Turns out one of the security guys was actually quite important to the strange story of how these different gods have fallen out with each other and their powers have been lost. They've fallen from greatness. It was amazing. But there is a series of sinister plots to essentially destroy the multiverse, which were all interwound in this. And as this thing suddenly burst forth and these people have opened these gates to flood these horrific things out and destroy the world, but they've had to do it prematurely because Kira, through all her wanderings and friendships and so on, has begun to uncover their plot, and they've had to trigger it before all the key parts are in place. But Kira and her podcast are now relatively universal, and she's got all her dancers and people from the Dolphin Blue Entertainment Centre. So she becomes instrumental to fighting these things that have flooded through from another dimension. She's not there physically fighting them herself, but there was no central... These things are all scattered city-states. There was no central news or intelligence. Kira becomes it. So she's there on this podcast, which has now become massively popular, but she's now not only the news, but she becomes essentially the command center, because some of these gods who've really collapsed, she brings them in and they don't have much. They have like old authorities that they haven't exercised in centuries, but some of them become drunk, some become hopeless. So she's almost making them get it back together. So she's helping them organise the resistance, and the bad guys are overthrown. But in the course of this, Kira's become something that other people are relying on. So when we look at what's made this world collapse to this level, these god people aren't really doing much. Things that they should, they fell out. So she reinstigates this council where they're all supposed to get together and talk about how to do things, and she gives them agendas and so on, just being a little pushy bitch because they were so kind of lazy and complacent. So she's running around giving them agendas and making it, because they've gotten used to kind of meeting with her in the shadows. Some of them really resent it, but she's just so bloody nice. So kind of a government starts to stagger back onto its feet. But what ended up happening amazingly in this, there's more plots and it's deeper. This evil plot went way deeper than we thought, and it was spreading out into the multiverse. But there had been a overall creator god, and he had some avatars that were running around, but each of these gods had realms that they were supposed to use. I think everyone got 4 realms. They had a couple of major ones, and they had like a couple of minor ones, but they were supposed to largely be in charge. And this god, they could draw on a little bit of the overall power, channeling mostly towards what they were in charge of. But there were empty seats at this Council of the Gods, this place that had been made. There was some empty ones, and Kira began to suspect that this broken kind of security guy that she'd known for ages was actually intended to be one of these gods or something. He was tied up with all this. Likewise, a lot of the people that she'd met, strange nature spirits and so on, that were just good friends or things that she'd bumped into once or twice or even commissioned some work from, they were key nature spirits of this whole cosmos who had again kind of drifted off, almost forgotten. Okay, no one's sort of making the place run. However, she rescues gods from trouble. She solves problems here and there. She sort of gets really involved. She was working very hard to get a flying ship made because she wanted to explore further into this world. And this world spread out. There were almost like dreamlands around it, which get into more and more fantastic environments and fantasy environments. And it turns out there was like a hard, almost a rift down the middle of this world. On one side was all tech, and the other side, tech is forbidden. Magic only. Nothing more high-tech than like a bow from another schism. But you don't go over that side, and you never go over that side with technology. But she sort of found out, well, she can get the right to go and explore it. So off she went. And through this, she basically found broken structures. She could hear a song in one area, and because she could swim, she dove down into this lake where there's these titanic crystal arches. 'Cause she was told there was some sort of bridge that actually led to some far strange world, and shattered parts of it were still here. So she was down there exploring it, and she'd been able to hear this song more and more and more and more as she followed it through. And eventually she actually communicates with the spirit of the creator god. Although she wasn't entirely aware that's what's happening, but as the voices asked her, what would you do? If you had the power, what would you do? And her answer was, make it joyous again, make it beautiful. So essentially what happens is the creator god turns to her and this little broken security NPC and essentially gives them his power. He's been shattered into different bits and we'd sort of been building them together. But what this creator god wanted was, things had probably gone wrong because it didn't know what people were. It had made animals and people and things because it wanted to basically explore life in the universe after it had created these things, set up these conditions. But he wasn't one of them. And in an actual conversation with one of the avatars, Kira had brought this out. So this guy basically splits most of his power in two, hands half of it to Kira and half of it to this security guy who turns out is kind of destined to be quite an important god figure. And he just turns himself into a baby. And, right, Kira's got him. Well, yep. Basically, raise God. Raise God. Make sure God goes to school. Make sure God does his homework. Make sure God eats his vegetables. And he will be raised so that he's got the whole mortal experience until he matures into godhood. And then you hand the power back. Because these were the two people who could be trusted to hand it back eventually. But Kira becomes a goddess, and her realms were joy and harmony, but also retribution was one of the other ones that came with that. The security guy was kind of nice, but very scattered. He was pretty much a teenager, extremely good at the fighting end of things and whatever, but a bit of a brat. So essentially that leaves all organisation and all planning to Kira. So then the campaign goes into this another really interesting phase where you are a goddess. You've been handed an immense amount of power, but you've got a multiverse to fix and a series of incredibly subtle and cunning, sinister plots from people who have managed to almost subvert the central planes once and overrun it with these horrible demonic hordes they had released, but they were in no way defeated, and they were off working on their backup plans, and some of these people might be amongst us. So there was this whole wonderful political intrigue while you're laying out what's wrong with the universe, which means you're having to actually send people out, you're having to look yourself, you're having to explore, you're having to go into these weird fantasy lands and these strange dreamscapes, and blend everyone together and try and create a new world that is beautiful and just. And we reworked this thing through. The performing was still key to everything. Massive tours being done. We sort of liberated the arts community. We were touring, and it was kind of interesting because we were bringing this joy and this energy to all these planets and all these places as we were doing other work. But you could come to these amazing concerts and then essentially meet the goddess of joy and harmony. In fact, meet the person who's largely trying to fix things, because we had this council, but what Kira was doing was trying to set this up because a problem had come from God's trying to run everything. So she's trying to set up a massive democracy that runs across multiple planets, make a mighty federation, essentially. So she's trying to lay the foundations for this. But you could come to these amazing concerts, which are spreading a huge amount of joy. Side note, that joy actually feeds her power, so it's kind of important. But afterwards, she's sitting on the edge of the stage, and you can have a chat with your local goddess. She can sit down and explain, what does this new government mean for you? What questions have you got? How's this going to work? What are your problems? Do you have anything that you need gods to fix? Oh, this is terrible because we've got this radiated wasteland where these terrible things are happening. So, okay, hang on. I can get these nature spirits onto it. There's 4 or 5 of them. So what's the specific problem here? Oh, well, it's this whole place is irradiated, and the fallout. Okay. I think the Great Spirit of Earth element, I think he can help you here. So hang on, I've got him on auto dial. We'll see. He's currently trying to help out these guys on another planet, but we can probably get him here. And so you could actually start fixing people's problems. It was an amazing thing. We're working to get these movies done and release these amazing movies, which would not only really uplift everyone, but would sort of tell the story of a lot of what had happened, so people weren't in doubt and rumour about how the world worked, but try and show people that joyous times are here. It was amazing, and this whole thing came to this point where it was the perfect place to end a campaign. Kira was still going and going strong. We had done amazing things. The young security guy has grown up, fallen in love with his boyfriend, who was the guy that ran Dolphin Blue. We've solved all of their problems. There's a lot of strange kind of, these guys are weird as the way only gods can be. Some are different aspects of each other, or blended aspects of each other. This guy's boyfriend, they can also form a corporate entity together, and travel through time. All sorts of amazing things happening. It was complex and beautiful, but in the end, we'd gotten to the stage where these guys have gotten married. We'd actually overthrown this evil plot. It coincided with the release of this amazing movie, and the first sessions of the Great Council of the planets. The Federation has begun. We've gavelled it in, and good times for all. And there was this enormous party, and it just went so successfully. And it was interesting because the feel of it, the momentum of it, it actually felt like this is the time to stop this campaign. There are many, many future adventures, and we'd met people we'd been looking after in the future who'd come back through time. These little brats that kept turning up. Turns out they were kids of this other couple who were nicking mum and dad's travel through time power and coming back to peek at interesting moments in history, which was often us. And we'd also found that some of the stuff that had been lying around had actually been left, that had helped us, was actually us from the future who had left things down. So it was amazingly well thought out. But this was the point that we left the campaign at, on a wonderful high note. It just felt so good to have that moment, and we could walk away. It was probably the most stunningly beautiful campaign I've ever played. For some reason, things worked together so well. The one player, one umpire thing meant that there was a lot of burden on the player to keep things going. Obviously, a lot of burden on the umpire to keep a story going. But as a player, there's not that moment you can rest and let someone else take it. You can't gather your thoughts and let someone else do their stuff. It's all you, and you've got schemes going and running, and you're just kind of hoping they're going okay. It required a lot of cooperation with the umpire, because you'd actually have to sit down and together kind of lay out, particularly with the longer kind of political stuff that you're doing. I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to work this way. This is how I'm trying to spin it. This is how we're doing it. That's going to take a fair bit of time. So over these next 2 months, I'm going to try and hit these beats, these times where I'll be there directly working with it, but we'll see, because we're still being played, every week, day by day we're playing, and we've got a calendar out there to make sure, that these longer plans that we're still putting in the work to make the things happen, and then in come skill rolls and so on, and we see how we did, and we see what side problems that were unforeseen might spin from what we did. So it was really interesting role-playing. The only combat thing we did was, as I was inspecting the wood that was going to be used to make my amazing flying ship, there was a thing a bit like a giant huntsman spider that was running around in it, and it was just scared. It had somehow gotten in amongst the wood and it was frightened. So it was just running around, so I just threw a thing called a capture circle around it, one of my many magic skills, which just basically trapped it in place so that we could essentially shoo it into containment, and then find out where the hell the wood had come from and quietly gets this thing back. That was about it for combat for her. There were combats around her. There were massive wars going on as these evil guys literally unleashed hellish minions upon the world. And but it was sort of interesting, particularly once it got to that higher stage where she's a goddess, because she has a job to do. She's the one in charge. She's running everything. Because the god guys, while they could be kind of sort of vaguely relied on to do whatever they were hyper-focused on, they were no good at the big picture, so she's doing it. But that means she can't get involved in personal combat. So when you trace some of these people who were actively trying to bring everything down, when you finally got them to their evil lairs, she literally calls for the Marines. That security guy that she's paired with, who's got, the other half of the god powers, he's the one that goes and handles that. She's like, okay, we found them. Here's our intelligence on the bad guys. Here's the resources I can get you. And then, is that enough? Said, yeah, we should be able to do it. Says, right. Well, we send him in. We're going to hover back. I've got some kind of reserves in case he needs them, and we're here plugging any potential escape holes these guys might have. But the job of busting into this horrendous, evil, demonic labyrinth, fighting the monsters, overcoming the guards, chasing these guys down, and having the huge hero battle at the end, it's like, that's not for Kira. If she was to plunge down and spend her time on that level of micro detail, she's not actually doing her job of looking after everything and making sure everything gets better. Turn it over to the specialists. And time again, it's like, well, we need to find out where these guys are, how these guys are doing. We need to sneak someone into this area. We need to infiltrate someone into this evil fortress, etc. It's good. We unleash one of the specialists that we've met, and he'll get a team of adventurers, and they'll go down. So it was interesting, because if normally those low-end jobs are what many adventure parties would be doing, you are the patron that is sending people out. And it was as entertaining as hell, because you've got so many plates spinning and so many irons in fires, and you've only got so many resources, because there's only so many people in this pre-journey that she's met who will have their strengths and their weaknesses and their quirks and whatever, but these are the people she's drawing on to be able to do these. So it grew organically into this amazing structure. An amazing game. Will stay with me forever. Kira remains my personal character of choice. She was amazing, and penguining became a sort of a verb, because there was a face and a sound that would be made when someone's trying to explain their wonderful journey and about how logical it is that these people's rights should be curtailed because they were slightly different to everyone else who lived around here, and as a player I'd be listening and there'd just be this and that became the penguin is not happy noise, and it actually became feared in the campaign, because it was like, oh, these guys, and they're doing this, they organise everything. So, they go a bit quiet at this point. that noise has become famous on media. It's like, penguin is not pleased with you repressing the minorities. And penguining, the verb, was to fix a problem by essentially being understanding and kind, and having ability to listen to different points of view and make a compromise that was best for everybody. To penguin a situation, to listen to all sides carefully, then do some research, and then make the steps required to fix the problem. Which has remained in local gamer parlance for us as other people who sort of, encountered side edges of this campaign. It's like, oh, we got to penguin it now. Yeah. We got to work on penguining this. I love it. So anyway, that's a very brief rundown on the most amazing role-playing campaign I've ever played. 2 people, my housemate with her amazing world that she'd figured out, and me willing to buy in and play everything from a total stranger in her world who knew nothing to someone who's been given absolute power and must use it for the best possible purposes, and then be willing to just hand it over when it's time. It was a very interesting game. Beautiful emotional journey. Fantastic. So anyway, just thought I would recount that one for you, because I think that game really needs to be, that game needs to be told. A role-playing campaign, 5 years, no combats, and never, ever a dull instant in it. There's so much to do and so much to explore and just such an amazing experience. You don't have to hit things to be playing a role-playing game. Anyway, we shall see you later on. He's going to push the button. He's going to push the button.